Thank you, Nitin. And once again, a warm welcome to everyone. The final session of the fourth edition of the ETAuto Tech Summit. This, as we all know, when it comes to the technology roadmap of OEMs and Tier 1s, of course, Tier 1's technology roadmap influenced a great degree by the OEMs. In this disruptive, innovative era, there are certain key drivers, namely, let's say, decarbonization, softwareization. These are some key drivers of which are influencing the technology roadmap of industry players. Again, because of the increasing disruptive nature of the industry and the changing mobility landscape, no one really has a clear, huge lead, irrespective of whichever geography that organization or that industry player may come from, because industry, again, it's going into a new learning curve. So it's kind of a level playing field without everyone having a huge edge over others, which is, again, making it almost necessary to collaborate, to partner. And if you look at all the kind of developments happening in the industry, globally, including in India, collaboration is becoming the name of the game. And two things I've observed over the last few years. OEMs are, in this case, more kind of applicable to passenger vehicle OEMs. OEMs are increasingly positioning themselves as mobility solution providers, and suppliers are repositioning themselves as technology partners. So much so that, I mean, if I take the example of Bosch, a leading automotive supplier, the Robert Bosch Engineering Center has repositioned, renamed itself as Bosch Global Software Development, BGSW, which is also a reflection of the softwareization trend happening. So in this case, in the partnership, the relationship between OEMs and suppliers, mainly Tier 1 suppliers, have been evolving over the last decade or so. But now it's reaching a point wherein they are more of partners and collaborators with almost kind of equal amount of skin in the game, as one says that, right? Yeah. So that is one factor. And another aspect, if I look at it, if I narrow the focus down to Indian suppliers, we are very fortunate to have senior representatives leaders from two leading Indian homegrown Tier 1 suppliers, Minda and Spark Minda. So Indian suppliers are also, over the last few years, I've observed perhaps there has been a kind of a realization that we have to step up our game when it comes to proprietary technology development capabilities. So this is what the scenario is, it appears to me. Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. And on the other side of the panel, we have a very experienced and industry veteran, Dr. Dhinagar, who has really seen a transition of the industry for a longest period. He started off in the passenger vehicle side in his career, and then moved on to two-wheelers. Again, in two-wheelers, from the conventional two-wheelers to a year or two ago to the new age industry of electric two-wheelers. So therefore, I'll start with you, Dr. Dhinagar. The nature or the value that the OEM used to see and was looking for in supplier, Tier 1 particularly. How would you define that currently, in the current age, as compared to, let's say, even a decade ago? Let's not go too much in the history.
Yeah, so anyway.
The microphone.
Good evening. So thanks, Sumantra. So I will anyway force you to go back a little bit more in history. And
of course, I mean, considering that you were involved in what was India's first indigenously developed passenger car, Indica, I think, yeah, you can.
I think Suzuki did that wonders, right? Maruti, when it started. So the cars, all of us who grow up with the car industry, automotive industry, so-called, the technology levels and the supplier technology partners, what we call them, was very much in a very different state. We were controlled, so many companies never had any technological tie-ups or capabilities to develop. It's a restricted industry. So Suzuki brought in set of partners, which was the core of the auto industry's backbone for supply chain. So they brought the technology, the first time aluminum radiator, first time battery which doesn't need service, first time a lot of parts work, and the finer latches, locks, every one of them came through that thing. Then the two-wheeler companies went for, again, tie-up with the overseas OEMs, brought in tons of technology. The vehicles which will kick you back when you kick, to the ignition systems which are very smarter, the scooters which can run in reverse, to the vehicles which runs properly, the carburetors which leaks all over the place, to a very smart thing, all came through partners. It is simply impossible for an OE to develop that. So we came from that era of vehicle development. India achieved its pinnacle of the best in the two-wheeler industry across the world, and then reaching to the best of emission and capability, everything what we did. And now we are entering the next era of vehicle and technology, where the partnership changes completely. So do we have them ready? No. Where the line is drawn, so we have an ecosystem of a component. The components no longer remains without electronics. They come packed with electronics. It come packed with the software, and that gets integrated into the vehicle software. So the boundary line between a supplier and OEM is difficult to draw today. Is the line is very close to the component, very close to the OEM, or very close to the raw material supplier, everything gets done in-house. So this line moves depending on a company and the partner ecosystems one has. So this is what is going to define the value chain. This is what is going to define the relationship. Long-term partnership requires a lot more trust and a lot more capability on the technology partners, and which needs to evolve over a time, because investing on a software resource, investing on tools which is ever-changing, humble LCD clusters and needle-based instrument clusters, what we drive today, no longer exists. It's an operating system, tons of code which needs to be updated, needs to be compatible with the changing code in your cell phone every day. Every day that code changes, every day your compatibility goes away. So this pushes the supply chain ecosystem from a normal, I make a part, tool up, next 5 years I supply, to I design every day, change every day, release a software every day, modify everything to suit the particular vehicle or the customer who uses the vehicle. Because OTA is done on a regular basis every 3 months, because the customer phone has changed, commands have changed, interface has changed. So the supply chain doesn't remain selling a part and walking away. It will remain with the OE till the vehicle is owned by the company and the customer, till it goes for a recycling. The partner is required to survive with the OEM for long term.
Right. That's interesting. Takeaway from what you've said is that from time where you take 2 years to develop something and that remains constant for the next 5 years, to now almost redesigning and now kind of developing much more frequently. I'll come to Anand. I mean, another OE perspective. You currently, so unlike Dr. Dhinagar, who is now only on the electric vehicle side, and you straddle both sides, right? So, and we are looking forward to having Piaggio's, or rather Vespa's presence in the electric space too. But as of now, you have the three-wheelers. But tell me, is the dynamics, how different are the dynamics in the electric vehicle side and on the conventional ICE side? I know, I mean, electric three-wheelers is not that kind of a dynamic situation yet, like how an Ola or at that space is. But however, is there any difference?
From the ICE as well as EV, right? Things have evolved. Definitely things have evolved. And on a very similar path. I would just give an example. In ICE, today I have so many fuels that I have to cater to, right? It's a gasoline, CNG, LPG, diesel, and all of these solutions are getting developed with different partners. Not necessarily I'm working with a partner to develop those. And since our regulations are literally catching up every year or other too, right?
Therefore, the reliance on the partners is
Absolutely, absolutely, right? So that is from the ICE perspective as a business, and we need to partner with them so that we can graduate to a next regulatory compliance very fast. Coming back to ICE, as in the previous panel discussions also, we as a country in a nascent phase, technology can evolve and can go in any direction. So when I'm looking at as an OEM, I would be looking at as a clean slate and all options available and which way we can sway, right? And that's where as an OEM, I'm looking at which technology I can quickly adapt and work with a partner so that I can offer a solution which is most efficient compared to what I have done last year, right? And that flexibility is not possible if I do it entirely in-house, build to print, old school of thoughts, right? It is absolutely not possible. So that's how the dynamics is very similar between the two. In EV, it is completely different. I'm partnering with different innovator partners. As doctor also said, it is becoming very thin line nowadays.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Lines are blurring,
right,
basically.
absolutely. Between OEM and actually there are good aspirational thoughts in our partners also. They want to be an OEM at some point of time. Yes. But as an OEM, I know my customer very well. That is the area where I invest myself, how to understand the requirements of the customer and work on those triple S, right? Sales, service, and aftermarket also, and defining the right specification, right solutions for my customer.
I see. Yeah. Amit, I would like to ask you about that. You, you had in your previous roles, you were you held senior positions in global organizations, and now you are leading the technology development and the engineering as the group CTO of Minda. Tell me, do you see a kind of evolution or the change in the mindset of Indian tier ones? I'm talking homegrown tier ones of from a time when very early the earliest period of build to print to then kind of really looking at RFQs to then decide to whether to make invest on technology or otherwise. Now, I mean, you yourself have, were instrumental in setting up the tech center for Minda. So do you see this a change in the kind of thought process of Indian tier ones, and because the prospects or the chances of being competitors with global organizations? How do you see the landscape changing?
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, like tier ones or the entire value chain of automotive actually have been in some way or the other been innovating and providing technology, be it the semiconductor players who actually every day come out with a new chip which can do more, to tier ones who take some of that and see what more they can do with that latest chip, and then maybe build it into modules, and then OEMs try to see, okay, what else can I do with this module, right? So the entire value chain is a value chain of technology providers. Now this has obviously been an evolution. If I compare this to, say, 4 decades ago, with OEMs actually controlling most of the technology. I mean, if you look at, GM split into GM and Delphi, Ford split into Visteon and Ford. I mean, the birth of these companies was because at that time the OEMs wanted to hold all technology and they were uncompetitive, they didn't get the latest technology. And this formation of tier ones is just ensuring that they get access to a multiple range of technologies at a competitive price, right? So that's the whole idea. Now, in terms of, I think the Indian ecosystem is not any different. I mean, if I look at what Minda has been making switches for last 50 years for two-wheelers, own design switches, which looked easy, but
That it has been doing, but it has set up its own technology development center and with making some significant investments only not too long ago.
absolutely. And I think we're the largest manufacturer in the world today, right? Out of India. And, like we supply to everybody. So, but what has changed is that with more electronification, with more openness with OEMs, more, like thinner lines, let's say, and also more collaboration, the appetite for Indian tier ones to expand and try to see what else they can do. Okay, moving from more components to systems to try and see what adjacent technologies they can leverage on, what are the new tech that can be adopted. Say, for example, if I look at Minda, our strategy includes making our current products smarter. That's basically electronification of legacy products. Yeah. So these kind of things, I think, has just made the appetite much, much more. And the accessibility that much more. And with a long history of great partnerships with these OEMs, the OEMs are also more accepting to look at tier ones, homegrown tier ones like Minda, to try and do more. So I think that's how I would look at it.
That's interesting. I mean, here I would like to get another tier one's perspective, Sanjay, and also, only till recently you were in the semiconductor industry, and as Amit was saying, the kind of technology development happening there. Now, with the growing focus or the appetite of Indian tier ones to kind of invest in more technological capabilities, growing aspirations, do you think the Indian tier one, on an average, is there yet to be able to compete well enough with the global guys? And is there a kind of is there a different story in the passenger vehicle side or in the two-wheeler side? Because two-wheeler, perhaps one would think that there will be an inherent advantage, considering that India itself is a huge base for two-wheelers.
Thank you for the very important question, and I'm very glad that you introduced me as my past life. So first 27 years were in semiconductors industry, and one of the reason I am part of Spark Minda as an Indian tier one, when I saw great successes happening in the global MNCs, majority of their teams, their development teams are based in India. So one curious question was always that if the same Indians can do that, why we cannot turn around Indian tier ones into MNCs from India, right? So that was the foundation, and that's why to your theme of this panel discussion, Indian tier ones are all set, in my opinion, with a lot of hunger in the belly to develop products which are at global standards, and we are at an inflection point based on what I am seeing today. Now, coming specifically to your question, I think as Amit also said, there's an evolution that happens in any industry. So if we say the 4 stages from a newborn to toddler to entering into youth and then adulthood, I would say we are in all regards entering into the youth and all aspiring to become adult. We have a long way to go, but there are some fundamental changes that have happened in the development or in the technology area. Number one, there is a unique value add that Indian tier ones can give, which is agility. And that agility comes from multiple factors. It could be a cultural thing, it could be a the same time zone to a lot of Indian OEMs, and it could be the hunger in the belly, but the agility is there, and that is clearly we see as a feedback from OEMs coming. So that is a very unique advantage that we have. Number 2, I think a mindset of frugal innovation. So a cost consciousness is always inbuilt in our culture. And that's where we can think innovatively while not spending too much of money. And we have many examples from, sending a, sending a rocket or a satellite to, moon and Mars, and getting it done in a cheapest possible way. So it is the same kind of a trend that Indian tier ones are showing. And lastly, I would say a big thing is the democratization of technology. So gone are the days when these were limited by a big investments or geographical boundaries, right? Now anybody who aspires to know knowledge, aspires to understand technology, aspires to develop products, you can do that in your homes. So the entire conversion from a traditional components to solutions involves a lot of software activities, a lot of semiconductors knowledge, and all these things are in Indian ecosystem today. So these three themes, I feel, are a big enabler for us to compete. And within our Spark Minda group, we are developing products which are at par with any global standards in terms of chasing cockpits or developing some of the cool EV solutions. So I think we don't think there is any barrier now, and we are all set to beat our global counterparts.
Best wishes to you and your peers in the Indian tier 1 ecosystem. Now, I'll come to Dheeraj. I mean, you play a role in terms of key role in the sourcing and the supply chain part. So how is that part of the pie evolving? Yeah. And there, do you see Indian tier ones really, kind of their performance? How do you gauge their performance?
Sure, no, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm founder of a company called CapGrid. We operate in the automotive manufacturing space. I spent about 12, 13 years working very closely with global automotive OEMs and tier ones, not only here in India, but also in Detroit, Tokyo, and saw that shift which you talked about, how OEMs are moving towards mobility kind of companies, right? The first, or for the longest time, autonomous vehicles are being tested by Uber and Google and not by Ford and GM, right? So that's kind of a start of the shift of how OEMs are shifting to a mobility solution provider. And then supplier ecosystem is looking to provide a holistic technology solution rather than a component or a product. Where we play a role, and it is very pertinent to this topic as well. If we open a passenger car, there are about 20,000 parts in there. And about 3,000 to 4,000 parts would be very complex core components which are engine components or an EV motor components or a battery component, where a lot of focus always has been, right? That can I get that more efficient engine? Can I get that more efficient motor? But we typically forget about rest of the 15,000 parts, which are being supplied by these smaller suppliers, which are typically in 50 to 100 crore revenue range. People don't invest technology or much financially or even technically in those players. This is where CapGrid, Manshu and I, both of us co-founders, we are building a company which is a cloud manufacturing company. We work with a lot of OEMs as well as tier ones who are doing assemblies, and we ask them to focus on the heart and core of their product, while rest of the thousands of components, we get it manufactured through our supplier partners in their factories, taking complete ownership of the quality, the warranty, and become sole supplier for those components.
One particular question, the warranty cost, who picks it up?
We own the warranty cost. Given we are owning complete, so we have a very strong technology to be able to monitor the manufacturing quality at the plant of our supplier partners.
Okay.
So primarily we become vendor, and if you think about it, that's the topic as well, that we become a solution provider.
So to me as an OEM, you are the manufacturer.
I'm the
you
manufacturer.
May get contract manufactured by someone else.
That's correct. And wherever we are working with EV two-wheeler players, EV three-wheeler, we just started working with a large commercial truck manufacturer as well. Our parts are going into Toyota Innova Hycross as well as we speak. The idea is to provide complete transparency of the supply chain, traceability of the part up to tier 2, and the quality traceability as well in the entire supply chain. And that is what leading manufacturers to trust us to do that job. And at whatever customers we operate, we actually kind of take over 50 or 100 suppliers. We kind of supply 400, 500 components to start with.
Right. Okay, let me get the OEM's perspective on this idea, this business model. Dr. Dhinagar, does it earn your confidence, this kind of a scenario where, like let's say in this case, in the context of this, CapGrid is the supplier, but and you are the OEM. So how does this model sound to you?
I think this is relevant because as OEM, we have that standard Pareto model, right? You list the items and go by the 70% value. The focus goes there because there's percentage-wise, any optimization, performance, all of them are coming out of them. The balance 30 always, it's listed, but the attention to them is unless there is a part level issue or disruptions or any assembly related parameter need to be changed or looked at, we don't focus. So that's true, that the focus on the top 70 is very clear, very sharp focus and details of all of them. And this is true for even tier 2. This will flow down if you take the vehicle tier 1, tier 2, and most of the parts, what is looking like a simpler part, theoretically is supposed to be tier 2, but it gets fitted in the vehicle, so it becomes our part. So I think the point is valid that the attention to detail on all the areas which, like India went into a big time into call centers, this debate was repeatedly told. Why will you do this lower end work? Need to be done for an industry to run, for companies to run. So for us, everything need to be efficient, and the parts which is not in our eyes also need to be efficient. The tiniest screw holding some part is as critical as the part which is going into a battery. So I agree with the view that yes, focus on that wherever additional focus is required. Anybody trying to help out is a very valid
Anand,
point.
your view on this?
Since in India, we are very cost conscious, right? Everybody who is contributor there should add value. This is an economical and risk assessment, both, that we will take into consideration. Point number one. Point number two, you talked about warranty. Even today, we have partners who manage our entire warranty also, right? So we have looked at all of those. If I do it in-house, what it takes to do it, and if I have a partner like him, what it takes, right? And there are business advantages of doing that, and we are fully looking into it from economic and risk perspective.
Dheeraj, one question. It's coming to my mind. You, one particular part, let's say, you may have more than one or two manufacturers.
Yeah.
I, as a component supplier, also supply that part. Would you have any kind of, because of your business model, would you be able to offer that same part to, let's say, Anand or Dr. Dhinagar at a better rate than me?
Of course, see, the categories where we operate in, we are talking about bearings, we are talking about gaskets, fasteners, washers, these are the categories where, like Mr. Dhinagar rightly said, that's 30% of the spend, 20% of the spend. I do not have full attention to that. The beauty of these categories is that the economies of scale works much more effectively in those categories as compared to an engine housing. So if you are getting like 1,000 manufactured versus 30,000 manufactured, in engine housing, the differential benefit will be relatively less, but in smaller categories, it will be huge. So by my ability to aggregate, let's say a forging component, it may not be exactly same part because this is direct material. There may be a separate material grade, there may be separate some small parameters, but by ability to aggregate those categories is allowing me to work with those suppliers and provide actually a better cost as well to our, I mean, we help, we are working with about, we are about 18, 20 months old, doing about 110 crore ARR, working with about 15 to 17 OEMs. And we have been able to reduce the material cost as well by about 3 to 5% for our customers.
That's good to know. One question to Amit, and maybe after that, I would request Sanjay also to respond. Amit, when OEMs float RFQs, tell me, I mean, you would be more often than not perhaps competing with Indian subsidiaries of global players you're in. So how is the response, everything else being equal, more or less, how is the appetite or the acceptance level from the OEMs when it comes to a tier one and its, let's say, industry peer who is a, let's say, a global player? Because I mean, I'll just also give you, okay, I don't want to influence your answer, but you give me your answer, then I'll tell you something else.
Yeah, I think, see, if I were to put myself in OEM shoes, I mean, they would be able to answer this question better. But I can tell you what we as tier one try and do. Yeah, we as a local tier one, as Uno Minda, try and do. Number one, I think what's very important is, to be able to innovate for Indian use cases and for, the Indian scenario. This is what I would believe a lot of global OEMs have as their second priority. Okay. I know they're also trying to see how to fit into the Indian scenario, but they spend a huge amount of money in global platforms. It takes that much more effort to try and do something different in India. For us, because the starting point is India, we try and think like this. We innovate in this space. We try and bring solutions that are relevant, okay, which are designed to cost, which are frugal. So this is what I believe that the OEMs like to see. Number two is a lot of focus in localization. Yeah, we wouldn't bring something. I mean, I wouldn't be in India and want to manufacture it in Malaysia or in Germany, right? I mean, I would like to make it in India, and we. I mean, I know that OEMs like come to us because they know what they will get from us would be a local solution. They wouldn't have to import. They, all the restrictions, all the issues, forex fluctuations, all those things are not there when they deal with us. Yeah, I think this is the second, like benefit or what we try and do. Number three, I think right now, if I really look at what it takes for any OEM to be or any tier one to be similar, is people, skills, systems and processes, and innovation. This is not any different.
Yes.
This is not any different between a global tier one and an Indian tier one, right? We are using the same set of people. I mean, Sanjay and me both have been, with global, like global like companies. We know how it is, and as long as you have that experience, that skill and knowledge, and you have that appetite, he said, hunger in the belly, and I think it's all the same. When tier ones or when OEMs meet me, sometimes, I mean, they know what I was able to deliver last time, and they speak to me with the same expectation. That I would be able to do it this time around.
Sanjay, everything else being equal,
yes.
in terms of the acceptance level, do you sense a kind of differentiation in terms of the comfort factor from the OEM side? If it's, let's say, just for the sake of this conversation, if your competitor is, let's say, Bosch or or a Denso, let's say.
I would say that, first of all, I agree with everything that Amit said. I will add on to that I felt in my short duration in this industry that most of our OEMs want us to succeed, which is actually a very pleasant feeling. And most of our OEMs are highlighting one thing and valuing one thing, which is, I link again to agility, which is our flexibility as Indian tier ones. So case in point that you have a request or a change request, how a global company behaves to a change and reaction time versus how an Indian company can behave, it could be a 10x speed to react, because that is again in our DNA. And I think that is our biggest strength, how we are able to navigate the real-time alignment with our customers without saying everything will cause you this or everything will take a contract, right? That gives completely a different value creation, I would say, that OEMs are loving us. And I would just summarize that it's up to us as Indian tier ones how much we can grow. Sky's the limit. Everything is on a platter. We just need to execute flawlessly at a quality level. I think that's what we need.
Opportunities are there, and it's only growing, and it's upon the Indian tier ones to tap them. And as you said, sky is the limit. We open the floor for a couple of questions, if there are any. If you have one, please raise your hand, keep it crisp, and mention who it is for. Okay, there goes the bell again. Okay, since no hand raised one here, can we have a mic? Gentlemen, can you raise your hand again, please? Yeah. Quickly.
Yeah, thanks for question. My question is to Mr. Tiwari, Dheeraj Tiwari. As you mentioned that you are in the cloud manufacturing, right? Now, in case of EV, basically I am leading a R&D team for EV manufacturing. So in this case, for the FAME 2 subsidies and other stuff, normally auditing is the part of legislative system to achieve it. So how are you managing it? Because you may be manufacturing some component for some quantity with some supplier, some more quantity with other supplier. So how it can be integrated?
Basically, you're saying that how are you ensuring quality control, right?
Not the quantity control.
Adherence
from
to
where the component is being manufactured actually.
No, sure, thanks. So for we are working with a couple of EV two-wheeler, three-wheeler manufacturers already, and just started working with a four-wheeler manufacturer as well. What we are able to provide them is complete traceability of that particular component got built in which factory. And if there are more than one suppliers with a share of business, then which batch came from which supplier. So through that traceability, that problem of the source identification is solved. It's actually not only EV for FAME subsidy, but even a lot of our non-EV traditional manufacturers also want that. And we are operating with complete transparency here. So for each and every batch of supplies to customers, they know the source. Which date it was inverted into our warehouses as well.
Thank you, Dheeraj. Any last question? No? Okay, so one quick question from my side to, again, the OEM representative here. And when I stopped myself from further giving the backdrop for the question to Amit is that I was talking to a promoter, MD of a large Indian tier one. The feedback I received was, yes, we face a competition. We face a little bit of a, not really a barrier, but we have to work a little harder than our global peer if I may participate for any new business. But that we face more in the case of an Indian OEM. Because for some reason, they have a little bit more comfort factor with a global supplier because of whatever, the track record and the huge supply. So when I took this and tried to get the perspective of the OEM, a CTO of a leading OEM said, I mean, he didn't quite say exactly the same thing, but he said, yes, he basically said the reason being that when perhaps it could be so because when a global tier one comes, has a huge track record of, and supplied millions of parts, these many. So therefore, to kind of preempt some problem, they have a little bit of a tendency to be more acceptable to that. So is that changing now in the new age industry, Dr. Dhinagar?
Yeah, I don't think so, because I've been part of the traditional as well as new age OEM. OEMs look for the good quality at a reasonable cost, and most of them are partners, like Minda have been partners for the industry for long term. We don't see any point. So, but the way then companies operate in the new age is the very tough deadlines on the timelines and extremely tough cost focus, because this is run in a very quick span with multiple iterations. So I think, in my opinion, I don't see any favors between either of them. But like repeatedly told by both our Indian partners, they are extremely flexible. Yeah. So I can think in the morning about something. This is possible to communicate, and they know the flexibility is required. because the documentation or a tightness with which it went or some part failed just before and can command is wrongly sent. We have faced all this in bigger companies, tier ones. A single can command take 2 months to validate and redo. I know the stack is very complicated. Code is written in another place. But here they can do like an OEM owned software. You can get it done in a week's time. So possibly, I don't agree to that statement. We don't think so.
Yeah, perhaps when I talked about the promoter AMD, I think perhaps he might be referring it in the case of new product lines where they do not have a track the history. Perhaps Amit, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just had. So I think one thing that happens with Indian OEMs when you're looking at new technology is there is a certain level of inexperience even at the Indian OEMs, right? Unlike a global OEM who would give you an SOR or a specification which runs into 100 pages with all details because they have taken it from elsewhere in the world, they know what they want, right? In an Indian OEM, they're trying to learn. They're trying to also bring that for the first time. They may not have the competency to be able to put everything very clearly, right? Now, when they go to a global tier one, they obviously, global tier one is able to point out, yeah, you know what, this isn't right for you, right? And there is where the experience maybe, maybe comes
factor,
in.
yeah.
But what happens ultimately, as Sir said, it's all about like quality
QCD.
and cost.
All about QCD.
It's ultimately about QCD. So yes, the initial working on new technologies, sometimes there is a benefit that you can see, but I think in long term or in medium term or even in short term, it equalizes, it evens out. And I think more on the Indian OEM side or Indian tier one side also, what's really happening now is the tolerance to failure is increasing quite a lot, right? So now they're not afraid to experiment, not afraid to innovate, not afraid to fail, right? Number one. Number two, I think they're all now, at least I can speak of my company, that we now are trying to develop a lot of system level capabilities because this is what OEM also looks at. At the end of the day, that don't just sell me a component, tell me how your component fits into my vehicle. Do you know the interfaces? Do you know what it takes that if this part fails, what else happens? How do I integrate the next part, right? So as long as you're able to also integrate and have a system level thought process and be able to think of it as a system, that's
chances.
what counts ultimately.
Thank you. Thank you. Any last words from Anand or Sanjay?
Maybe I will just say that the best way to realize how the Indian ecosystem is evolving. So you have Indian OEM, tier 1, tier 2, our suppliers on a parallel treadmill. Only the speed of treadmill is different. And we are holding hands and trying to align. And the one who are going to align better, they are going to be the winners.
Well put. Anand, anything from your side?
Actually, this partnership journey we have started quite decades before, but it is going to accelerate on a newer path. That's how I would like to connect it.
On a newer path. Very well said to end this a very interesting panel discussion with. Great to see the Indian tier ones really stepping up their game and also with a increasing appetite for investments to kind of build their own technological capabilities with or without assured returns. So that's a good sign. So best wishes to all of you, to the OEMs as well, and to new age partners like you. Thank you very much.